Welcome to another edition of Big Old Top 20 Countdown. This week, we're counting down the top 20 smooth jazz songs, and we're talking to our guest, Dr. Charles Taylor, author of the book, The Juneteenth, The Journey of Journey to Juneteenth. Anyways, let's get
Juneteenth,
into
the
this
promise of freedom.
countdown. Huh?
I said Juneteenth, the promise of freedom.
The Promise of Freedom. I like that title. I absolutely love that. But let's get in this countdown. The number 20 song comes from Dom Chicolete. The song is called Candy Apple. Let's get into it. Dom with Candy Apple, number 20 on Big Old Top 20 Countdown. Yeah, you guys, that was the number 19 song. Randy Scott with Embrace featuring Bill Mojo. And we're talking to our guest, Dr. Charles Taylor. How are you, sir?
I'm fine. I'm doing quite well, thank you.
Please tell my listeners about yourself, sir.
Well, I grew up in Missouri, a small town called Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Perhaps our most infamous person in that town was Rush Limbaugh, whom I
Oh,
disagree with totally politically. Uh,
okay.
but that's where I grew up. When I grew up, the town was about 25,000 population. It was segregated, but in the poor side of town where I live, there were poor blacks and whites living together. That section was called Smelterville, and so
Mhm.
that experience shaped me in terms of race relations, in terms of trying to find out more about my history. But I was politicized at the age of 16 because the
Mm.
community activist came to our town to be our director of our new community center. And
Okay.
he really taught us about our history and about how we came from kings and queens, and that we need to hold our head up high and carry on the tradition of our ancestors. So his name was Bobby Williams, but I credit him for making me more aware about my history.
That's right. And what was the journey like? Is this you're a doctor? Well, you're a doctorate. You have your doctorate. Am I correct?
That's
What's your
correct.
doctorate in? What's your doctorate in before we get into the book?
Yeah, it's in education, curriculum and instruction, and educational policy.
Wow.
At the time, educational technology was just taking off, so I also have sort of a minor in that as well.
Oh
But
wow.
I started out as a history major from my undergrad to my master's degree. And then, of course, when I worked on my PhD, I took a number of history courses. So history is my love. That's what
That's
my
awesome.
passion is. And so that's
Me
why
too.
I got interested in the Juneteenth.
Me too. And so we're gonna talk more to you, but let me get back to this countdown. The
Sure.
number oh gosh, the number 18 song comes from James P.D. Spraggins with High Five featuring Oil Silk. Let's get into it. James P.D. Spraggins with High Five featuring Oil Stink on Big Old Stop 20 Countdown. Oil Slick. Yeah, you guys, that was the number 17 song. Storm Baskins with When I Think About You. And we're talking to our guest, Dr. Charles Taylor. I put respect on your name. You deserve to be respected, sir. Um, your brother also tells me your brother Steve, who I met through, he was telling me that you're a professor too. Am I correct?
Yeah, I was a professor for about 10 years at a private college here in Wisconsin. Before I became a professor, I was an administrator. I was a dean at three different colleges. And so
Oh,
I had both administrative and faculty experience.
oh wow. How did you get into that?
Uh, well, it's a I think I've always had interest in two broad areas:
Okay.
entrepreneurialism and academics. And if I
Yeah.
wasn't in one, I was always in the other. And even when I
Oh,
was in academics, uh, I had, consulting or side things on the side to make sure I keep my foot in the economic side of things. But
okay.
as you get older, you want some kind of security to settle down a little bit. So I
That's
went
true.
back into academics. Uh, I was a vice president, academic affairs. I was all these administrative positions, and then typically when an administrator gets, I don't want to say get tired of the classroom, but let's say the administrator wants to change, they'll go into the faculty ranks. And I absolutely love being a faculty member and interacting with students. And my students were at the doctoral level, so I helped many of them get their doctoral degrees.
Oh, that's cool. Wow, that is awesome. That is awesome. And so how did you get into writing?
Well, that goes back at least 40, 50 years. And in the early 90s, I
Hmm.
created a group called the Multicultural Publishers Exchange. And this was
Okay.
a 250 membership organization of small Black and Brown Latino publishers who published multicultural material back in those days. And so there was a
Okay.
very limited amount of Black books coming out for children and even adults. And so our organization back then published collectively almost 25% of all the multicultural literature that came out in this country. And so we had national conferences, we had all of that. And so I wrote a couple of books during that time. And then when went back into academics, I wrote quite a few more books. So this is actually my 12th book, this Juneteenth book.
Wow.
But this Juneteenth book is really special to me because
Okay.
I wrote the first one about 25 years ago, and that one
Wow.
was used in the campaign to make Juneteenth a national holiday. And
Yes.
so this is sort of a follow-up to that one, but it's much more detailed, and it takes us back to Africa, where humankind
Okay.
first began. And so it
Okay.
literally traces our history. And so to me, this is a perfect book for families to, to,
Hmm.
to gather around and read and learn about true Black history that challenges this Eurocentric nonsense about our history. And it
Right.
it and it does it in a way that it's easily to understand and to see how we ended up in the position that we ended up today.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. You know what? We're going to talk more to you, sir. But let's get back into this countdown. The number 17 song, actually the number 16 song, comes from Steve Oliver Live. This song is called A Kind Heart. Let's get into it. A Kind Heart by Steve Oliver Live, number 16 on Big Old Stop 20 Countdown. Yeah, y'all, that was the number 15 song, Blake Aaron with Let's Get Lost, one of my favorites on here. Now it's time to get into the first extra song of the week. First extra song of the week comes from a friend of the show. She hasn't been on the show yet. She might come on next season. Her name is Valera Lene. Let's get into it. And her song is called Lonely. Let's get into it. The first extra song of the week, Valera Lene with Lonely on Big Old Stop 20 Countdown. Yeah, you guys, that was the first extra song of the week. Don't ask me to sing the words because I don't know the words. And we're talking to our guest, Dr. Charles Taylor. Sir, I like that you're really focusing. There's a blue book that you're. I've read a little bit of it. That you're focusing on Juneteenth. How did you become so passionate about it? And tell me, not only how you became so passionate about the Juneteenth struggle, but also how did you? What is the concept of the books?
Well, the book sort of fills in some of the missing pages of our history. It
Hmm.
starts, as I mentioned, it starts in Africa, and
Yes.
it tells uh, and it shows the great accomplishment of Africans back in antiquity and even in prehistory, the great empires that we built, the great pharaohs that we produced, the queens and all of that. So it shows Africa in all its glory. And
Okay.
typically, when our kids learn in America and in other Western populations, they always learn about Black history starting with slavery. And
Yeah,
to start Black history with slavery is an insult to our ancestors
that's true.
because we have to start it with the greatness. If Africa is the cradle of civilization, history has to start there instead of pretending that Greece was started civilization or Rome or any of these other places. We have to be truthful. If we're truthful, then we can have some healing in this country. But as long as
That's
people
true.
deny us our history, we're going to always be divided.
You took my next question from me. Because I was going to ask you why do you think it's so important for the youth, especially African American youth, to know our history?
Because once they know that they come from inventors and scientists and doctors, their whole self-esteem changes. And it's not only liberating for Black kids, it's liberating for all kids because now all kids will understand the true history and our connection as one species. But as long as we're denied that truth, humanity can never find its way back home. And to me, to find your way back home is to do right by Africa. And so
That's
we got to do right by Africa
right.
globally and in every other way. And once we make that right, then we can begin to straighten out some of the problems that we're dealing with.
That's right. That's right. And I agree. I agree totally with you. We're going to talk more to you, but I'm going to get back into this countdown. The number uh, 14 song comes from Kirk Whalum. This song is called Pillow Talk. Let's get into it. Kirk Whalum with Pillow Talk on Big Old Stop 20 Count. Big Old Stop 20 Countdown. That's all from Soul Train. Yeah, you guys, we did 3 in a row for you. We did Kirk Whalum with Pillow Talk. Number 13 was Julian Vaughn with Gratified. And number 12 was DW3 with Ventura Highway, featuring Peter White. Now it's time to get into the Comedy Corner. The Comedy Corner comes from a good friend of the show. Might be on the show very soon. I don't know yet. And his name is Funny Tim. Let's get into it. Funny Tim, the Comedy Corner on Big Old Stop 20 Countdown. Yeah, you guys, that was a Comedy Corner with Funny Tim, and we're talking to our guest, Dr. Charles Taylor. Dr. Charles, sir, you were touching in on it, and you said you focused on this, but what is one concept that is misconstrued by various cultures about Black people?
Well, everything, the whole notion that Black people were savages or Africa was some primitive society when Europeans first discovered it. All of that is nonsense. When Europeans first were introduced to Africans, it was either as warriors, emissaries, traders, explorers. Africans were the first on the planet. And
That's
so
true.
all these things that are attributed to Western civilization really started with African people. So that's why this book starts with Africa, because we need to correct the historical record from the beginning.
That's
And
right.
and if we can do that from the beginning, then we can help people understand how we're connected and how we were separated by white supremacy and all this other stuff, the transatlantic slave era and all that. But the book does a great job of explaining not only that, but the migration out of Africa, where Blacks explored, where they settled. It talks about uh, all the questions that people have about where we came from and all those kinds of things. And it also talks about the destruction of African civilization, why that
Hmm.
happened, and then how it led to the transatlantic slave era. So it's a pretty comprehensive. The book is 258 pages, so it's pretty comprehensive. And then it comes all the way to America, 1619, when the first Africans arrive at Jamestown. We talk about Bacon's Rebellion, where there was an opportunity for poor whites and Black indentured servants to rebel against the elite, and how that came out. We talk about the Revolutionary War, of course, the Civil War, what the first Juneteenth must have felt like to our ancestors,
Yeah.
and how slavery, although it ended in a way that kept Black people subjugated.
Hmm.
It went from slavery to Jim Crow. And so there wasn't that much distinction between how Blacks were treated in slavery and in Jim Crow. And so the book really lays that all out, and it offers lessons, I think, for all of us if we can just reflect on history and how it's still impacted.
You keep stealing my questions. I mean, it's like because I was going to ask you what you hope somebody gets out of this, out of both books.
Yeah. And I hope they get that the truth is important and that the truth will set us free. Because if people understood just 1/10 of what Africans and African people have contributed to this world, I think race relations would be improved somewhat. Because our story is just beginning to unfold. And in the
Right.
last 50 years, we've had some great scholarship. And these scholars are filling in some of the missing pages. And so my book contributes to that. If people really want a good history of our people, I think this book will give them that.
That's right. That's right. You know what? And sir, we're going to talk more to you, but we have to get back into this countdown. The number 11 song comes from Bob James and Dave Koz. The song is called New Hope. Let's get into it. New Hope by Bob James and Dave Koz on the Go Stop 20 Countdown. Yes, you guys, that was the number 10 song, D. Lucas 20, featuring Michael Brown. And it's time to get into the second next song of the week. Second next song of the week is another song by Vanair Lene. This song is called Fly Away. Let's get into it. Fly Away by Vanair Lene on Big Old Stop 20 Countdown. Yeah, you guys, that was an awesome song. Fly Away by Vanair Lene. We're talking to our guest, Dr. Charles Taylor. What is your response to people who say, knowing about this stuff it's kind of racist and y'all don't need to know about your history and stuff like that and things like that, and it's not going to help you guys at all. What's your thing? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think the problem is if we want to understand our current contemporary problems,
Yes.
I think we'll find the roots in the past. And so it's extremely important that we learn history, because if we learn history, we would knew how our wealth was destroyed even after slavery. You know, take Black Wall Street, for example, or North Carolina or Florida. Almost every city where blacks built wealth, it was destroyed. And so, and if you look at that, what's called the nadir means the lowest point, the depth of despair. That described the years right after Reconstruction up until about World War II for Black people. Were extremely, the opportunities were limited. You name it, it happened to Black people. And so, but if you understand that history, you understand our wealth gap is based on what happened during the nadir and during slavery. So you can trace all these problems back.
That's true. That's true. Also, I want to get your take on this is a deep topic, but what's your take on reparations for the people who say that we don't need reparations, or are you for it or against it, or what's your take on that?
Well, I would like to say they'll find the answer in the book, and they will.
Okay.
But let me preface that by saying that if you look at the atrocities that were committed against Black people, if you look at the tremendous wealth that Black people created, not only in this country, but literally all over the world, in Europe, the Europeans are scared to death right now because Africa is rising. They're beginning to say, hey, enough is enough. And if Africa reclaims its wealth and its minerals and all of that, some of these Western countries' economics would collapse overnight. In Burkina Faso, I don't know if you've been keeping up with what's happening over there in Africa, but uh, they kicked France out of the country, and they've been warning in the United States, you know, not to come because we need to control our own destiny.
Right, that's right.
And if more countries did that, it would change the world, because Africa still owns most of the world's raw materials and resources. They have enough agricultural land to feed their people. They have everything they need except freedom. And once they take that, they're going to rise again like they did back when we had empires. That is my belief.
That's right. That's right. You know what? I have a very deep question for you next. We're going to get back into this countdown. The number 9 song comes from Kim Scott. This song is called Amadi Lisbon. Let's get into it. Amadi Lisbon by Kim Scott, number 9 on the Go Top 20 Countdown. Yeah, you guys, that was we did a 3 in a row for you. We did Kim Scott with Amadi Lisbon. Number 8 was Felipe Cliche with New York. Number 7 was D.S. Wilson with Sangria. Now it's time to get into the last, we're going to get to the Independent Song of the Week. Independent Song of the Week, another song by Vanilla Lene. The song is called Ego. Let's get into it. Ego. And if you guys didn't know, she was actually supposed to be the guest this week, but life happens. Let's get into it. Ego, number 7. I mean, the Independent Song of the Week on Big O's Top 20 Countdown. Yeah, you guys, that was the Independent Song of the Week, Ego, with by Vanilla Lene. We're talking to our guest, Dr. Charles Taylor. What is your opinion of Black people using the N-word?
Well, I think our ancestors would disapprove of that because that's a word that was used by our oppressors, our colonizers, the people who hated us, even though some Black people will claim, oh, we just reappropriate it. Now, if we say it, it has a different meaning. It's still, that word will always have a negative connotation. I don't care how you dress it up. You know, you can put lipstick on a pig, but you still got that pig. And so
You right about that?
that word is that, and it's not necessary. You know, and instead of using that word, why not use brother or sister? If
That's
that's
what I was
what,
about to say. I was about to ask you. I
if,
was about to ask you. You
absolutely.
want
I
us
mean,
to be
if
that
that's what you
person?
mean, use brother or sister. If you don't mean that, then you're already confirming that has a negative connotation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right. You're right. And do you think that we will ever do you ever think that the Black folks will ever be unified like the other races?
Well, if Africa can find its way, it is going to impact Black folks all over the planet. And
Yeah.
so if these countries can unite that are really trying to confront this Western empire, if they can get away with that, then I am extremely optimistic.
That's right. That's right. Do you agree with Pan-Africanism?
Well, I think Pan-Africanism and any other term is only as good as it is applied. And so if that by that term you mean African unity,
Yes.
absolutely. And if by that term, if you mean Africans should cooperate worldwide, absolutely. And so um, it always depends on how you define it. That's how I typically define it.
That's right. That's right. But sir, we're going to get back talking to you, but let's get back into this countdown. The number six song comes from Spiral Gyra. The song is called 50/50. Let's get into it. Spiral Gyra with 50/50 on Big Old Top 20 Countdown. Yeah, you guys, we did a number five song was D Brown with Mr. Smooth. Now it's time to get into the old school gem of the week. The old school gem of the week. His birthday was actually last week, but we couldn't play the song because we were premiering my whole albums, period, plural. But we're talking about the awesome Brian McKnight. This was his first single that he ever came out with in 1992. The song was called "The Way Love Goes." Let's get into it. Brian McKnight with "The Way Love Goes" on Big Old Top 20 Countdown, Old School Gem of the Week. Yeah, you guys, that was an awesome Brian McKnight with The Way Love Goes. Is this the way love goes? I want to sing it in front of you because I want to be, I want to be respectful to you. I respect you, sir. And
It's all right.
also, I'm
Your
not gonna.
show.
You know what? Usually, this time I get into people's business, and you know what? We know what. Shout out your family, your loved ones, whatever. Shout them out. Give them a shout.
Well, you met my brother Steve, or at least talked to him.
Yes,
So, of
yes,
course,
yes, 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 yes.
Steve, all my siblings, my son, my grandson, they live in LA, so I'm certainly sending the shout out their way, and my wife, my
Yes.
cousins, absolutely.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I want you, you've been singing it all countdown, but I want you to give me a minute of inspiration, please, sir.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Give me 1 minute of inspiration. Give me an
Oh,
inspirational message or thought or whatever you want to say
sure.
to motivate people.
Yeah, at my heart, I'm an educator. So my inspiration would be for people to study their history, learn about their history. Because once you learn about your history and your people's resilience and your people's strength, your people's contributions, you just want to make sure that that legacy continues. And so if you educate yourself, people can't tell you who you weren't or who you were not. They can't tell you that you were not a pharaoh, your ancestors. They can't tell you any of that nonsense that they've been trying to teach you that you came from a population that didn't make any contributions to the world. So as an educator, that would be my advice. Get educated, read books, listen to podcasts, but get educated about our history, and then you'll be equipped to deal with the world.
Who is your influence, your major influence?
Well, it wasn't famous people. It was people, like my uh, first grade teacher. It was people like Bobby Williams who came to the community center and taught us about our culture and history. It was my grandmother. So it was people like that that taught me that I could go as far as my mind would let me and my will. And so people think that we need some famous person or celebrity, to look up to, but our own family, our own network of friends, those are the ones who give us that initial support and that thrust that we need. And with that proper thrust, we can go out there and deal with it.
That's right. That's right. I'm gonna ask you two questions actually. What is the one thing that you're most proud of about us as African Americans or Black people or whatever?
I,
So what's
I,
one
I
thing?
I think well, one of them is so many, but just the resilience. Uh, and in addition to all these wonderful contributions like the pyramids and all those great wonders in Mali, the richest man in the world, and all those kinds of contributions, but it's just how we treated people. And even when we went out over the globe and migrated, we didn't go to conquer or do any of that stuff. We went to bring civilization. We went in peace, and so all the populations that came after us was because we laid the foundation. So I'm proud
That's
of our
right.
people for that.
That's right. And what is one thing that you feel as a culture that we really need to change?
Well, we need to change our behavior towards each other, because if we learn to trust each other and learn to go into business with each other, we're going to make some serious progress. But we can't be like crabs in a barrel. That day is over.
That's
Africa
right.
Africa is rising and it's going to need us, and we need to rise collectively in this country and get our act together.
You know what? I was gonna earlier this today I was talking to a couple brothers from the church, and we were talking about how some Africans that were actually born in Africa think that they're better than Black people. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's to me, that's just a distraction, because what they need is more communication and more interaction. We need from both sides, because we have far more in common. We're not catching hell because we're in America or Africa. We're catching hell because we're Black. So whether you're over there or whether you're over here, we have some of the same issues. And so
That's
we don't
right.
have time to fight each other.
That's
That's the
right.
way it's always been, divide and
That's right.
conquer. So I'm not
That's right.
about that. I'm about building bridges.
That's right. That's right. And you know what, sir? We're going to talk more to you, but let's get back into this countdown. The number four song actually is a one of my favorites. Saxy Rose. This song is called Sunset, featuring Kayla Waters. Let's get into it. Saxy Rose, number four, Sunset, featuring Kayla Waters on the Gold Top 20 Countdown. Yeah, you guys, we did three in a row for you. We did Saxy Rose with Sunset, featuring Kayla Waters. Number three was Steve Oliver with Live with Skyway, another one of his songs. Number two was Marshall Charloff with Eccentric, featuring Gerald Albright. Let's get into the number one song, y'all. The number one song is a good song. I actually like this song. It's by Mike DiLorenzo. This song is called Modern Times. Let's get into it. Modern Times by Mike DiLorenzo on Big Old Stop 20 Countdown, number one. Yeah, you guys, that was the number one song. Mike DiLorenzo with Modern Times. We're talking to our guest, Dr. Charles Taylor. Doctor, how can people reach you, sir?
They can go to my website, drcharlestaylor.com.
Um, and give the information on the book. How can people buy the book? Where is it available? And
Yes,
give
they can, I'm sorry, they can go to my website, drcharlestaylor.com, or they can go to their local bookstore and just give them the name of the book. They can get it from their local bookstore. The bookstore will order it. They'll know how to do that. And so,
that's all.
yeah.
That's awesome. I want to say thank you very much,
Well, thank
Dr.
you.
Taylor. Appreciate you so much for coming on and enlightening us so much. And I want to say thank you to everyone who's listening, everyone who's watching, everyone who supported this show. This is for season 9. I think it's our 362nd episode. I want to say thank you so much, you guys. The Block FM has been carrying us. What's called Apple Music Podcast Awards, Kill Radio, everybody. Thank you so much. You guys have just shown me so much love. And this is the second to last episode of season 9. And you made it, brother. You made it to season 9, sir.
Congratulations.
I'm so happy. And if you all want to reach me, you can reach me at www.linktree.com/OLUSHEYI. And the thought for the week is never give up. Because if you give up, you lose. And we always end this with a gospel song. And I'm in this one of my favorite gospel songs. It's by Richard Smallwood featuring Kim Burrell. This song is called Journey. May God bless you. May God keep you until we meet again.